Hey there, and welcome. So, you're getting ready for a big .NET interview. It's not just about knowing the answers, it's about explaining them with confidence. We've boiled down all the essentials into a quick-fire guide to help you turn that interview stress into solid confidence. So, let's dive right in.
You know that feeling, right? The perfect job is sitting right there, but first, you have to get through the technical interview. I mean, it can feel like a total gauntlet. But here's the secret. It's all just a series of patterns. We're going to break down those patterns so you can walk in there totally prepared to show them what you've got.
All right, first things first, we've got to start with the foundation, object-oriented programming. Interviewers almost always start here because they want to check your core understanding of C#. And if you can nail these concepts, you're not just showing them you can write code, you're showing them you know how to structure it the right way. So, when an interviewer asks you about the advantages of OOP, what they're really testing is if you can connect the code to the business value. Don't just list off the definitions, you've got to connect the dots for them. Talk about how inheritance makes development faster, how polymorphism leads to super flexible code, and how encapsulation helps us build more secure, rock-solid applications. Okay, let's zoom in on one of those pillars, polymorphism. It sounds complicated, but it just means many forms. A single action, like, say, a draw method, can do completely different things depending on the object it's called on, whether it's a circle, a square, or a triangle. Now, C# has two main ways of doing this, and you can bet interviewers love to ask about the difference.
Look, this all boils down to one simple question. When does the program decide which method to call? Think of it this way. With overloading, the compiler figures everything out before the program even starts. It's all decided at compile time. But with overwriting, the decision gets pushed off until the program is actually running. It's chosen at runtime, using those virtual and override keywords. Getting that timing difference is absolutely crucial.
A true classic, the abstract class versus the interface. Think of an abstract class like a partial blueprint. It can give you some of the structure, some pre-built parts. An interface, on the other hand, is a pure contract. It just says, hey, you must have these capabilities, but it offers zero help on how to build them. And the real game changer, a class can implement multiple interfaces, which gives you incredible flexibility in your designs.
Okay, ref versus out. The key difference here is all about initialization. With ref, you're handing a method a variable that already has a value, and you're giving it permission to change it. With out, you're basically giving the method an empty box and saying, hey, you have to put something in this box before you're done. It's about modifying versus creating.
All right, enough theory for a minute. Let's move into practice. Because, let's be real, a huge chunk of .NET work is all about the web. So this section is all about how we handle and secure those web requests, starting with the king of web patterns, MVC.
So every time you click something on a modern .NET website, this little dance happens. A request comes in and hits the controller. Think of it as the air traffic controller. The controller then talks to the model to get whatever data it needs, passes that data over to the view to make it look pretty, and then sends that finished page right back to you. Being able to just casually walk an interviewer through this flow, that's a huge win.
But why? Why did MVC basically take over from older stuff like web forms? It all comes down to one beautiful phrase, separation of concerns. By keeping the UI, the logic, and the data in their own separate boxes, the code is just cleaner. It's way easier to test, and it gives us developers total control over the HTML and CSS. It's just a smarter way to build for the modern web.
Okay, this is a big one. This security concept trips up so many people, but it's really simple. Authentication is just proving you are who you say you are. Think of it like showing your ID to the bouncer at the door. Authorization is what happens after you're inside. It's the bouncer checking your wristband to see if you're allowed into the VIP section. Just remember, authentication always comes first, then authorization. Let's talk about the unsung hero of modern apps, the Web API. This is the engine that powers everything from your mobile banking app to your social media feed. It's the central hub that lets all these different clients, your website, your iPhone app, your Android app, all talk to the exact same back-end logic. It's basically the universal translator for data. So why did Web API become the go-to choice over older tech like WCF? Well, it was practically born for the modern web. It's super lightweight, it's open source, and it speaks HTTP, the native language of the internet.
All of that makes it way, way simpler to build services that any client on any platform can easily use, and that's exactly what today's world demands.
Okay, so we've covered the logic and the web. Time for the final critical piece of the puzzle, data. How do our apps actually talk to a database? This whole section is about how we get, store, and manage information the smart way.
So how do we actually connect to that data? Well, you've basically got two main paths. There's ADO.NET, which is the old-school manual approach. You write a lot more code, but you get raw, direct speed. And then there's Entity Framework, or EF. It's a modern tool that automatically turns your database tables into C# objects for you. And that's the trade-off, right? The amount of time and headache you save with EF is just massive.
And even within Entity Framework, you have two ways to work. It's simple, really. Database first. That's for when you walk into a project and there's already a big old database sitting there. You point EF at it, and it builds your C# classes. Code first. That's for brand new projects where you get to call the shots. You design your C# classes first, and EF builds the database for you.
Here's another classic SQL question. A primary key is the main identifier for a table. It absolutely cannot be empty, and you only get one per table. Simple. A unique key also makes sure every value is unique, but, and this is the trick, it lets you have one null value. This is perfect for something like an optional email address field that needs to be unique if a user provides it.
You know, the easiest way to remember this one is with an analogy. A clustered index is like a dictionary. All the words are physically sorted in alphabetical order, which makes looking things up incredibly fast. A non-clustered index is like the index at the back of a textbook. It's a separate list that just tells you which page to go to. A table can only have one physical order, just like a dictionary, but it can have many different indexes pointing to it.
Now, this is a subtle difference, but it's an important one. A function is really designed to do one thing, calculate and return a single value. That's why you can use it right inside a select statement. A stored procedure, though, that's the heavy lifter. It can perform really complex actions, change data in the database, and return multiple values using output parameters. It's a tool for much bigger jobs.
Okay, so let's boil this all down into your final cheat sheet. To really crush that interview, you've got to master those core OOP differences, really understand the flow of a web request from start to finish, and know your data access patterns, especially why you choose Entity Framework and how indexing makes everything run faster.
And that right there brings us to the most important point of all. Just memorizing a bunch of definitions isn't going to cut it. The people who really impress, the ones who land the job, they don't just know what these technologies are. They understand why they were created and which specific problem each one solves. Walk into that interview with that mindset and you will be unstoppable. You've got this. Good luck.